Amy, welcome to the Mom Room.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
But this was just meant to be because 2 days ago I got an email and they wanted to send me your book. And I was looking at the book and I'm looking at the topic and I'm like, this is the best topic
Oh,
for a book.
thank you.
And then I looked at where you were from and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm going to New York. And then we were able to make it happen.
Yeah,
So
I'm
here we
so
are.
glad to be here. Thanks, Renee.
So to start, I guess you could tell us a little bit about yourself, about your family, and also your career, because I was reading about you and I was like, wow.
I'm old enough to have done a few different things. So I grew up in Pennsylvania, Scranton, Pennsylvania, home of The Office.
Oh,
That's
yes,
what
yes,
people
yes.
usually know it from. The Office was not shot there, but it was set there. I grew up there and moved to New York City right after college to be an actor. And I was an actor for about 10 years. Not longer than that, I guess, but really like making it for about 10 years. And then I became a parent and stepped off the merry-go-round, and things were never quite the same after that. But all along, I had written my own material
Hmm.
because I learned early on that if you're an actor and you want to be on stage, sometimes you have to create your own opportunities to perform. And so I used to do sketch comedy, and then after I had kids and I wasn't really working like I used to, I wrote a one-woman show called Motherload that ended up running in New York for a long time and then touring all around the country. It ran in New York while I was pregnant with my third baby,
So
visibly,
just you on
or just me
stage?
on stage for about 75 minutes. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
And the set was, every parent will identify with this. The set was what your living room of your apartment, I live in New York City, looks like after your kids go to bed. You know, that moment when like the kids go to bed, you shut the door and you're like, and then you turn around and there's just
Yeah,
this,
you can't relax.
it's this crime scene of an apartment. Right. There's all this stuff to do. So that was what the play was me getting my house sort of back to
Oh,
normal while talking about, telling stories and stuff. Did that around the country. By then I had my daughter and I brought her with me. And then out of that, I got a chance to write a book that was sort of based on that. And I've kind of moved more into writing, although I also have a parenting podcast. It's called
yeah.
What Fresh Hell. And I've been doing that for 8 years. And we
Wow.
do live shows sometimes. So I've been creating a lot of different kinds of content
Yeah.
about parenting. And this book is sort of more for women. I tried hard to sort of widen the lens and make it not just for moms, but for women. And that's really what I'm interested in.
So your first book, because I was looking at that and I
Yeah.
was like, damn, I need to read this. Tell us a little bit about what that book is about. And also, that's your first book,
That was my
right?
first book, yes.
So where did you even get the idea, like, I'm going to write a book, as opposed to putting all of that content into a different, like a podcast or a show or something?
I was an English major in college, so I think I
Ah,
I did like to write. I wasn't sure I had it in me to write a book until I did. The book is called When Did I Get Like This? And it comes from, again, that moment that you sort of catch yourself, like you see yourself in the mirror, like, when did I stop wearing jewelry and belts, right? When did I become this
yeah.
frazzled mess? Wait a minute. And up until I became a parent, I was somebody who really always had my act together. Not that things were always easy, but I'm going to set my mind to this and I'm going to do it.
Mhm.
I'm going to be an actor and I'm going to be on Broadway. And then I did it. And then like I set goals for myself and then I achieved them. And then I became a parent, and then trying to sort of be the perfect parent, of course, is not a good idea and something I spent
Impossible.
several years. Yes, impossible. Impossible. And nothing went, the lack of control that comes with being a parent.
Yes.
So each part of it, for me, getting pregnant didn't go like I thought it would. My births didn't go like they thought they would. Breastfeeding, like every step of the way was like, well, I'm not going to overthink this. The last time I kind of overthought it and that led to some problems. This time I'm going to be totally chill.
Mm.
And then the next thing would come along, like getting my oldest into nursery school. And I'd tell myself I'm not going to go to crazy town this time. And then I did, over and over again. And that's what the book's about.
What was your transition into motherhood like? Because for me, I feel like when I was pregnant, preparing to have a child, I was looking on Pinterest and I'm like, okay, so really into doing the nursery
Mm-hmm.
and all those kinds of
Mm-hmm.
things that you realize don't matter and is a waste of time. I was like, why didn't I prepare for postpartum? That's interesting.
Well, because
Like,
they don't tell you. I think they,
I
right.
know, yes. And so, what was your transition? 'Cause I remember being at home thinking, I know so many people that have a baby and who have had a baby recently, like friends, family members. How did nobody say anything? Like, I remember distinctly thinking that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I went over, visited them, held the baby, like, just casual visit, and
Mm-hmm.
how did they not tell me what
Yeah.
they were going through?
I don't know.
So what
I
was
don't
your
know.
experience like? Like, anything super unexpected or
Well, what was
all of it?
unexpected for me was everybody dreads something, right?
Mhm.
They dread that they're not going to lose the weight, or they dread that they're not going to, they're going to get off their track at work, whatever. For me, I dreaded breastfeeding. For some reason, that
Mm.
was the one, like, it just seems like I'm not going to be able to do it. Kind of gross, definitely problematic. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And my husband, was very like, okay, like, yeah. But then I was also very invested in, but you have to
But you
breastfeed and you
have
have to
to.
only breastfeed. You have to exclusively breastfeed. So he was sort of confused by my being both obsessed that I had to do it and obsessed that I wouldn't be able to do it. I spent a lot of time thinking about that and waiting for it to be terrible, even after the baby was born, saying to
Mhm.
my husband, like, I'm going to try it until mastitis kicks in. And then that is it. And he was like,
Okay.
oh, yeah, whatever. Okay. And it went fine. It went for me. I'm not saying that happens for everybody. It
Mhm.
doesn't. For me, it actually worked fine. And I kept waiting for the part where it didn't work, and it worked great, except for the part where I thought I had to exclusively breastfeed, that nobody could give the kid a bottle or a pacifier because that would ruin everything.
Yeah.
And I didn't make that up. I mean, I was being told that by
Yeah.
the message boards and the articles and the magazines. This is 20 years ago. So I was reading this in magazines and internet message boards instead of on my phone. But it was the same message. It's
Yeah.
all or nothing. And if you make one slip up, that's the end of it for your kid. I hate that, but I think that I fell as prone to that messaging as I think
And I
just about anybody
honestly,
else
I've
does.
done episodes on this topic with physicians who specialize in breastfeeding and lactation and I think that messaging is still ingrained in people's heads, even though they're saying like a lot of women feel this pressure to exclusively breastfeed. And actually, a lot of babies are undernourished
Mm.
because they're not supplementing with formula
Mhm.
when they should. And
Mhm.
everybody feels so pressured, like, can't give them formula because then
Right.
you ruin everything. And
Right. And then I did, like, with my third kid. Yeah, she got an overnight bottle, and guess what? She goes to high school now. It's fine. But
yeah.
but where I, push back a little bit is this idea, like, well, mom, if you just stopped overthinking it. I was being told this
Mm,
by the professionals I was consulting. So I wasn't making up this idea that it was all or nothing. You have to sort of figure out for yourself what messages you're going to listen to, and which ones not. But it's not so easy as so relax.
hmm Yeah, I remember my husband specifically going, we had formula in the house just in case. And I remember him going and giving me like the formula and being like, it's okay. And I was like,
Right.
I needed
You
him
needed that.
to say
Yes.
it's okay.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, wow, okay. I would have never done it on my own.
Yeah.
Like, never. So, speaking of being stressed as a parent, I was looking at your recent podcast episodes, and in one of them, you guys were talking about how, and I just discovered this the other day, how the US Surgeon General in September issued an advisory on the mental health and well being of parents. And they said it's an urgent public health issue.
Yeah.
Um, you would think, like, I always catch myself thinking back to when my parents had little kids and were raising us. And I'm like, oh, that must have been so hard. But it seems like today is harder
Yeah.
and everyone is more
Even
stressed.
more stressed.
Why do you think that is?
That was interesting. So we dove into this report. These reports are usually put out for, like, COVID, AIDS,
Yeah, like big time
cigarettes
things.
are really bad for you. And now the stress of parenting is really bad for parents. And we went into that too, like, oh, come on, it's always been hard. But there are some sort of very modern things. The stress, one thing that they circled that I thought was really interesting was school shootings. I mean, now when I sent my kid to first grade, I didn't worry about his safety at school. I was sort of like, okay, now I'm good till 3 p.m. I'm good till pickup. And parents today do not have that luxury at all. So that's one thing that's different. There was some stuff about, like, the amount of time parents spend on their phones, which I think can get kind of parent blamey. But there is this idea. I do think I had to choose to watch a baby story on TLC or pick up Parents Magazine
Right.
to receive these messages,
Yes.
right? you're picking up your phone to, text your spouse to see what time they're going to be home, and let me just check Instagram, and you're being told you're a bad person. Like, I
Yeah.
think that's much more
Or like they're doing it so much better than me.
right.
Yeah.
It's much more insistent. It gets in. It's
Mhm.
seeping in a lot more different ways. And then there's just increased things like food insecurity. I mean, the report got pretty policy wonky on the increasing cost of childcare. It went much further than just parents today are crazy. Stop being crazy.
Yeah.
There's reasons,
Mhm.
and the report unpacked them in ways that were really compelling, I thought.
I saw a TikTok about that's where I got this information was TikTok.
Well, right.
Speaking
However
of
you get it, it's
picking up
good.
your phone. So she was talking about that report by the Surgeon General, and she was saying a lot of it is because parents nowadays are doing like intensive parenting. And I was like, that's really interesting because also like everybody is financially stressed. The cost of living, the cost of childcare, the school safety thing, which
Mhm.
we don't so much have that in Canada, but I have
Mhm.
seen creators videos about like dropping their kids off at school and how scared they are and just
Mhm.
like you don't feel comfortable. You almost like want to homeschool them, keep them home.
Yeah.
You're just kind of like, here you go, like off. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that, like I can't even imagine feeling that way. So it was interesting that she was saying it was from this like intensive parenting. Like we're
Yeah.
so, but also like we're intensive parenting because we're bombarded with information about how we need to be better and do better and don't do this, and don't say that, say this. And if you do that, your kid's going to do this. It's like,
Right.
it's
Right.
nonstop.
Right. I'm not so sure it's optional. Like in the report, they talked about how they have data that working parents, are spending more time at work, and then they're
Yes.
also spending more time with their children,
Yes.
at activities, playing with them,
Yes.
reading them books. That parents are doing more of both of those things
Yeah.
than they were 25, 50 years ago.
Oh my God, I saw a statistic not too long ago, and it was saying working mothers today spend more time with their kids than stay-at-home moms in the 70s
Yeah.
did. And I was like, let that sink
Well, let
in.
me tell you, I was there. I was a child in the 70s and 80s,
Like,
and
this is a fact.
it wasn't all bad.
Yeah.
I was somewhere. I was just somewhere in the neighborhood, and the church bells would ring at the corner at 6:15, and then all the kids in the neighborhood
Yeah.
knew, like, okay, time to go home for dinner. You kind of weren't welcome at home until about 6:15. Until then, just go figure
you
it
go
out.
play.
Go figure it out in your friend's backyard.
You go play.
Yeah.
Okay, your new book, which I love the topic of this book, it is called Happy to Help: Adventures of a People Pleaser. Where did this idea come from? When you were like, I'm going to write a second book, how did you land on this topic?
It's kind of a funny story. Zibby Owens, it's her Zibby Books that's publishing this. And she had read my first book, and we were talking about ideas for a second book. And she had talked to me about the idea of slack, that women have to give themselves slack. They have to pick up the slack. They have to give other people slack. What if you tried to write something like that? So it was sort of like it was sort of on assignment, knowing that would lead me somewhere probably. So I started with the whiteboard, and I'm like, okay, what are all the times that I really should have given other people more slack than I did? When were the times I picked up other people's slack? And those columns were like full, 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 full. And then the last column was one of the times I really needed to pick up the slack. I really needed to work harder, lean in, and do a little more than I did, because boy, was I lazy. And there was nothing in that column. And I looked at it and looked at it. I'm like, right, there's nothing in that column. And that's what the book is about. The book is about me, and I think a pretty typical way, being somebody who always tries my best, always shows up with my, Girl Scout on my honor. I will try to help people at all times, and be that person, do my best, and over applied that at a couple different times in my life, I would say.
This might be a little bit of like a therapy kind of question, but do you think being that way is because you're trying to please others, or do you think there's like this intrinsic motivation where you're doing it for yourself, like to do your best to always like go, go, go?
I think it starts early. I think people pleaser is a word that's applied to women 99.9% of the time. And I think it starts early. And I think we are, I talk about this in the book, really conditioned to be helpers, to be the helpers from very young ages in lots of different ways. And I was, like I said, I was a brownie. I was, the class president type. I was a total Tracy Flick. I'm also the oldest of a large family.
Okay.
So I actually helped bathe and feed my younger brothers and sisters and enjoyed it. But that I was somebody who was a good helper, and I was happy to help, and I didn't mind, and I was awfully good at it. All of those things were told to me so often and from such an early that I did sort of fold them all into my sense of self. And it's really only through writing this book that I was like, do I like helping people? I guess I think I do. I never really thought about it. If everybody tells you you're type A, you will start to believe you're type A, whether or not you're really type A, whether or not type A is even a thing. We could talk about that.
And it's like self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. You start to see yourself the way the people tell you that you are. And so being who I was and being raised the way I was, which again, I think is kind of typical. I grew up with this messaging that I have to do as much as I can for all the people around me at all times. I am here to help other people, which is a little bit different than pleasing other people, but certainly people pleaser is the sort of buzzword that everybody would recognize as describing that.
Do you think there was a difference in being a people pleaser before kids versus after kids? Because when I was thinking about it, I'm not a people pleaser. So I was really thinking like what that must be like. And the first thing I thought of was it's probably a lot easier to be a people pleaser before you have kids, because once you have kids, you have to give them so much that you might start letting other people down. Like, did you experience that?
I more thought of it as like the actual definition of people pleaser is somebody who puts other people's wants or needs before their own.
Yes.
And I look at that, I'm like, that's being a parent.
Literally being
That's literally every mom. That's what you do. That's what you're told to do. That's what you're supposed to do. That's what you do. So I guess I would say if you're not a people pleaser before becoming a parent, of course you are after a parent. Of course somebody else's.
But like, what about like, did you find yourself not doing as much for others because you were doing so much for your kids?
I think that might be one place where I tried to keep going. I think I'm thinking of like I had an audition for a play, Shakespeare in the Park. I mean, I was like 3 weeks postpartum and really not ready to leave the house for any number of reasons. But I got this big audition, and I don't want to let my agent down, and got me this big audition or myself down. And so I scrambled and did this thing that I really should have just said no to for my sanity. And I didn't get the part, by the way. And if I did get the part, that would have been a horrendous. It wouldn't have worked at all. So I should have just said like, yeah, I'm taking some time off. But I think I was sort of a little bit like, no, it's fine. I can do it all. Hand me more balls. It's fine. I'll keep juggling. No, nothing's changed. But I think that's kind of common too for new parents. Nothing has changed. Of course, everything has changed.
I can still do everything.
Yeah. So I think that's maybe where the people pleasing can get hard when you are telling yourself you can still drive your mom to all her doctor's appointments now that your kid is sick. You know what I mean? Like, no, I don't have to put any of this down. You do. Yeah.
So if there was like, if people are listening and they're wondering like, oh my God, am I a people pleaser? What are some things that you would define being a people pleaser as?
Well, this kind of gets to the core of what the book is about, because I think that women, mothers, and women who are not parents tend to take on more than they are really capable of handling, because we're supposed to, because we're asked to, because we're told that's what it is to be a good woman. And so most of us end up overwhelmed. And when you hit that point, even if what it came out of was not like, I have no boundaries between me and other people. Maybe it's just like your roof caved in and, and your mother-in-law is sick. Like sometimes it's situational. And when that overwhelm hits you and you ask for help, what you often get back is an invitation to fix yourself. And so I think people pleasing is one of those things like, are you a people pleaser? It's like, do I want other people to be happy? Yes. But I'm not too busy because I'm a people pleaser. I'm too busy because society expects me to parent like I don't have a job and work like I'm not a parent, right? These things, it's systemic, it's societal. And when we're like, I don't think I can volunteer for this anymore, but there won't be a basketball tournament if I don't run it this year. Like, okay, can you examine your people pleasing? Like, no, somebody else needs to do the basketball tournament this year. I feel like it's kind of simplistic, and it keeps us doing too much and thinking like, okay, I just need to be less of a people pleaser, and then I won't feel overwhelmed.
So is part of it, like, is people pleasing something where people should, like, if there's people listening and they're like, oh, I identify with this so much, but they want to maybe set boundaries and take more time for themselves, like take care of themselves better.
Yes.
How do you recommend people start to make changes?
So the most important thing I learned from starting to do some of this for myself, which was literally like, there's parts of the book that are about the process of writing the book and having to make time for that when you are the one who does everything and takes care of everybody. And me saying to my family, my kids are older. I had I had a grade schooler and 2 high schoolers at this point. And me saying, like, people are gonna have to step up around here and, do more. And at first they said, okay, just give us a list of stuff and we'll do it. And I was like, no list. No, lists will work too. No list. You just have to like see things that need to be done around here. And nobody kind of knew what I meant. And then it's very easy to say, I think, like, never mind. It doesn't work. I'll just do it all myself. You take it back too quickly. So that's what I would say, is that when you ask for what you need, it's not that people are out to ruin your life. It's like, what do you mean I have to notice we're out of dog food? When they've never had to do that before, they're a little bit baffled. It is invisible. If the workload is invisible, then they're a little confused when you say, look, you got to start doing more around here. They're sort of like what? They don't know what you mean. It's a process. And when you get that resistance right out of the gate, it doesn't mean anybody's a bad person. And it definitely doesn't mean that it's no use and you have to go back to the way things were. You have to stick through it. And it took me a while to figure that out.
I think also people might do things differently than you, but also maybe on a different timeline.
Yeah.
And I remember I made a TikTok, this was like years ago. I think it was in quarantine days. And we were going upstairs for bath time and I had to go like change. I had just gotten home or something. Anyways, I said to my husband, like, he was going to give Milo a bath. And so we go upstairs and he starts organizing his closet or like getting his clothes ready for work the next day. And I did like what you're saying. I was like, is he not like, what is happening? And so I just started giving Milo a bath myself. I did exactly what I shouldn't have done.
Right.
And I remember making a TikTok about this. And so many people in the comments, because my husband had no idea. He was like, I was just getting my clothes ready for work. And then I was going to do it.
Yeah, and that could be true. It could have been 5 minutes. Right.
Totally. Mm-hmm. But instead of saying something and being like, you're still going to give him a bath, right? Like, I'm going to be doing this. No, I was like,
never mind.
Martyr tendencies. Just being like, I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
And then when I thought back on it, I was like, I'm actually in the wrong here because I could have just asked or said something and he was going to do it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's like catching yourself in those moments before you're like, I'll just do it myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes it gets even harder. Like sometimes I have a couple of times in the book that I talk about on that basketball tournament that I just made up before that you're on the call with the other parents association people and you say, so I'm actually not going to be able to head up the basketball tournament this year. So somebody else is going to have to do it. It's hard to say. But then the really hard part is the silence that follows because there probably won't be somebody else that's like, I've always wanted to take on that thankless task for the next 6 Saturdays, right? So there's a weird silence. And again, if you're that kind of person who's always been, or I guess I could kind of do it or I could be the assistant, right? You start to scramble. You start to scramble to fill the silence with you're uncomfortable and you don't want to make other people uncomfortable. That's a new feeling for you. So I guess never mind. I'll just take back what I just said. And I've done that too. And sometimes there might be no basketball tournament.
Yeah.
Somebody said to me this morning, well, then somebody will do it. I'm like sometimes, or maybe they won't.
You have to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
Okay. I just realized maybe I am a people pleaser.
Well, we're all a little bit like,
because I can't stand someone else being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like if I'm getting like a pedicure and she like slices my toe open, I'm like, oh my God, no problem. It's okay. Like, I'm sorry. I must have
Right.
moved. Like, you know?
I,
Yeah.
I
And
don't,
women are definitely
yeah,
conditioned to be that way.
to care about other people's needs. I'm not so sure it's so terrible, right? It's only turned into something that's thrown back on you when you're like, I'm kind of overwhelmed. Well, stop people pleasing.
Yeah.
Stop caring
Right.
so much about what other people think.
Yeah.
It's not very helpful, I guess, is my point.
Do you think, in your experience, knowing that about yourself, do you think people pleasing causes resentment?
It can.
Yeah. I'm just thinking like
It can.
a lot of the listeners have little kids.
Yeah, like never mind, I'll just do it myself. It can cause resentment that way. But that's why I sort of invite people to ask again, wait longer, let the silence exist. Not pop up when your baby starts crying because maybe the other person does hear them and you just get up really fast each time. Or just be really, really honest. Like, I'm struggling. We need to pick 2 mornings a week that you get up early with the baby because I really need some help here. I think when we're good helpers, we think we shouldn't have to state what we need, be upfront about what we need. If we're good at perceiving what other people need all the time, right? If you're the kind of person who has the coaster before the person even puts the drink down on the table, if you're that anticipatory kind of person, as most mothers are, I think, then you kind of wait for somebody else to do that for you, and they don't. Yeah. But it doesn't make them bad people. It's just you've been doing that work for yourself and everybody around you for so long, they don't see it.
Yeah, I think if you're overwhelmed, you have little kids, asking for help and also trying to figure out why you feel overwhelmed and maybe what can change in your day to day to kind of alleviate that.
Right.
Sure.
Sometimes you just have too much to do. It's not because there's something wrong with you that you're overwhelmed. You're overwhelmed because your list has too many things on it. Your schedule is too tight and you have to do something about that, but you have to do something about the situation, not, your makeup, your feelings.
Yeah, I used to get so overwhelmed on the weekends when in quarantine, all of this stuff happened in quarantine.
Oh,
all these like
it all came to a
revelations.
head. Yeah.
It would be the weekend. My husband's a physician, so he was working all week. People listening right now are like, Renee, we know. We've heard this a million times. But I have to tell Amy, okay? But then the weekend would come and I'm like, finally, like my husband's home. We're going to be together. I've been taking care of a toddler all week. And then he would like go cut the grass or something. And I'm like, so I had to take it upon myself to be like, you know what? Teach me how to cut the grass. So now I have a little moment to like listen to a podcast, to get outside, get sunshine. I'm not in the house where I've been all week. So it's like picking up on these things that you can make an easy change to kind of, I realized that same thing for myself after a while that, wait a minute, I'll be the one when your kids get older. I'll be the one driving to soccer practice and ballet practice and drop off and pick up. I'll do that. And you stay home and make dinner because I would rather go see the soccer game and talk to the kids in the car, or at least you split it. You don't always have to take the least fun job for yourself. Yeah, totally. Is there a people-pleasing experience? Like things that you recount in the book, is there something that you think about all the time and you're like, I shouldn't have done that? Or like, what is there something that
there's one story I tell, and it's actually not about parenting, although I was on the board of a performing arts organization, and this is when my kids were still pretty little, and I used to take them to the kids performing series on Saturday morning. So they found me. Bing, 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 would you like to be on the board? They wanted somebody, and I thought, yes, I was a mom and I was glad somebody thought I could be on the board of something. That sounded very exciting. Cut to a few years later, we scheduled a breakfast because it was convenient for the head of the organization, like a 7:30 breakfast for a mom of 3. And I was like, oh, okay. And I had to make arrange with my husband, can you please take them to school on this day? So we could go to a breakfast that I could have just said, make it a different time. And I was on a committee and the CEO said, I hate to ask this. And when they say that was coming next. I almost hate to ask. You already do so much. But right. Would you head up our new fundraising committee, which was going to involve calling people up and asking them to give money? I mean, can you think of anything? I like. What's the worst job in the world? That it might be that. I did do that in my salad days. I had to cold call people for. Yeah, it's terrible. It's a terrible job. And I'm looking at her and I'm thinking like, I don't want to do that. Like who would want to do that? Nobody, I can't do that. And no, I can't. I have too much going on. And then this person said to me, I hate to ask you again, but it's just like really on the board. Who else is there? Who else is there really? And I thought to myself, like, well, this one can't do it, and that one can, no, and this one, their partner's sick, and this one's, the head of a law firm, they can't do it. And right, I tick through it and like, oh, it is me. Okay, all right.
Yeah, you don't think that about yourself, though.
Okay,
Like, well,
right,
I can't
right,
do it.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, none of those. I tick through each of those other people. None of those other people can say yes. So that means I have to. I mean, I didn't literally think that, but it was only later that I unpacked. Why did I think she can't do it? He can't do it. He can't do it. She can't do it. I have to do it. Why did I not say I can't do it?
Mm-hmm.
Why did I say, well, oh, well, it led to, a year of me being bad at calling people and asking them for money because I didn't want to do it.
Oh my gosh. A year?
Yeah, I mean,
every once in a while.
It could have been 2 weeks, but I made it a year by putting off making the phone calls.
Right. Okay. And what would you say your people-pleasing status is now? Like after going through and writing the book, and like, do you find yourself different now?
Yes, I find myself much more willing now that I know this thing that I do, that I ask for help and then take it back too quickly, to wait, to sit with the silence, even if it gets uncomfortable, to live with the uncertainty. What if nobody does the tournament this year? To accept all of those things, and to understand that kind of nobody's really asking me to forever fix everything around them. My kids won't be like, I had a bad day on March 6th and that was my mom's fault. I mean, maybe they will when they're teenagers, but they don't, nobody around you really expects you to make every part of their lives perfect, except maybe your kids. But then you can't over apply that to everybody else in your life.
Yeah. What is the quote? There's a quote that's something like, I'd rather disappoint other people than myself, or something like that.
Yeah. Gretchen Rubin, has these 4 tendencies, and she talks about that the obliger, she says, is somebody who, like, I definitely did this when I was little. Easter Sunday, like one kid in an adorable suit, 2 kids in an adorable suit, daughter in an adorable dress, and then we're like leaving in 5 minutes, and I don't have anything to wear, and I'm putting on my maternity pants and scraggling a comb through my unwashed hair. That's an obliger, right? That is somebody who's sacrificing themselves for other people. And you're more of an upholder, she would say, when you are the kind of person who sees what's out there in the world that needs to be fixed, and it's important to you, but you are also able to hold space for yourself. And she says that's a lot more rare than being an obliger. I think it probably is, but I think about that all the time, as like, maybe try to move the ship in that direction.
I'm just curious, what do you do for yourself for, like, I know it's such a buzzword, but self-care? Like, what do you do that fulfills you outside of doing things for other people, or like family life, or like, what are your interests? Like, what fulfills you?
I love yoga.
Oh yeah.
I do a lot of yoga.
Hot yoga?
Sometimes. I don't love it, but do you do hot yoga?
I was like really into it for a long time, but I feel like I'm too flexible, and so I need to gain muscle instead of like stretching all the time.
I'm really floppy and stretchy too. See, that's why we like yoga. I'm like, oh, I'm good at this.
I'm rocking this.
Right. I love yoga, and it really helps. And I love watching bad true crime with my high school daughter.
Nice. You need that sweater that says "True Crime in Bed by 9."
Yes, that sounds like a great day to me.
Okay, so I saw that you guys recently did an episode, or maybe it wasn't too recent, but it was something about your favorite advice for moms. And so I'm going to ask you because it's a lot of moms listening that have young kids. What's your best piece of advice, or like
there's sort of 2 that I've returned to over and over again. The first one is, this is as hard as you think it is. That when you're going through something hard, yeah, it's hard. Your heart is hard. And maybe the one down the street has it even harder. Maybe, she's doing it and she just lost her job. Like, okay, her heart is hard. Your heart is hard. Everybody gets to have
You
their
don't
hard.
compare. Like,
Yeah. And don't feel like you don't get to feel your feelings about things. They're hard. And it's not because something's wrong with you. It's because things are hard. Doesn't mean you don't ask for help, but it means you don't blame yourself that you're having a hard time on 3 hours sleep, right? And the other thing I would say is the idea, I tell myself this a lot, this is not forever, this is just right now. Everything's temporary. And that's even good things. Like my kids' high school graduation, I'm sitting there thinking, this is not forever, this is just right now. Enjoy this, be here now. Don't be taking too many pictures. Be in the moment, enjoy it. This is good. And then also when things are really hard, this is hard. It's okay.
yeah.
You wish you weren't here. That's okay. You're feeling that. It's okay. You're going to get through this. This is just right now.
That was I always said that to myself with like the meltdowns, the
Yeah.
really difficult moments. I was like, this is temporary. Like in 2 hours, he's going to be cuddled in his little bed sleeping and you're going to be reading your Kindle like this. But in the moment, it can be so overwhelming and like the world is ending. Like this is the worst situation possible. But it's like, it's so come and go.
Yes. Or if you have a 3-year-old who can't share because 3-year-olds are not very good at sharing yet, you're like, oh no, I have a child who can't share, and then he'll be a 4th grader who can't
going
share.
to jail.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
yeah,
this is just right now, and you don't have to fix the problems that you've made up in your head for the future.
Yeah. And with regard to the first one that you said, it made me think of how nowadays, if moms, it's so common with, like grandparents or something. If a mom is struggling with something, like, oh, like I didn't get any sleep, they always hear the comment like, oh, so-and-so had 5 kids and no help. And it's always trying to shut down somebody's struggle.
Yeah.
And then they feel like shit because they're like, oh, okay, maybe what I'm doing is not hard because apparently everybody else had it worse and they're fine.
Exactly. You finally say you're struggling, and then you have somebody explain to you that actually you're not struggling, or that you're struggling is your mindset, not your reality.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's that helpful.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Okay. I put together some fun and fast questions to end. Okay. So what is your coffee order?
Oh, a flat white.
What is that? Milk and espresso?
Yeah, it's espresso with like it's espresso and a little bit of water and a little bit of milk.
Okay, got it. If you had to be on any reality TV show, what would it be?
This is a good one. My favorite reality TV show is Sister Wives, and I don't think
oh my God, that's hilarious.
I don't want to be a sister wife, but I would love.
Friend of.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Right. I'd love to be in the background at one of the baby showers for
In the
sure.
drama?
Yes. Yeah.
If you could have dinner with one celebrity,
Sacha Baron Cohen comes to mind. I mean, he's so
as himself or as like Borat?
As himself, which would probably not be allowed, but like, because you just want to know, how do you never break? How do you go that far in?
Yeah.
And have you ever even come close to breaking character? You're right. I'd want to grill him on those things.
I've never heard my dad laugh more than when he was in the basement. I distinctly remember this, watching Borat. Like crying. Like I've never heard him laugh like that. Favorite TV show right now?
Oh,
that you're watching?
Well, I am watching Sister Wives season 19, and it's one of these 19, and it's one of these, like, can I say it's great TV? No, it is great TV if you've watched seasons 1 through 18. I'm not giving up now.
Oh man, I've never watched that show, but I'm always intrigued by the previews.
It's so good because if you watch a recent season, and one of their kids committed suicide, and I don't want to like make light of that. That is not sort of, that happened in real life. That hasn't happened on the show, and it might not be part of the show. So that's terrible. I'm not talking about that part being lighthearted. But when you see it is a guy who once had 4 wives, and you see them in season 18, like they all hate each other.
Okay.
And then you go back to season 1 where they're like, this is fine. This is so amazing.
Okay, now I got to watch this.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Okay. If you have 24 hours to do anything, what would you do?
Sleep till I felt like getting up. I'd have like a lot of coffee, do a yoga class, walk around outside for a while, and
watch Sister Wives.
There'd be a new Sister Wives waiting for me, and then
with
the podcast about the episode waiting for me. Yes, and then a really good dinner.
You could go to any concert.
Oh.
What concert is it?
I just saw Madonna recently.
Oh,
And I guess I would go to like literally that concert again. I had preposterously good seats, one of these like last minute
nice.
corporates. Somebody has an extra ticket. Do you want to go? I was like this close to Madonna.
Oh my God.
And I mean, I knew every word. She wasn't afraid. It was one of those concerts where it's like, all right, I'll
She
sing
sang, like,
Borderline.
all the
I'll say
old hits?
exactly like we're going all the way back, people.
Oh,
Like
nice.
we're going back to 1984. It was none of this like I'm only going to play my
Yeah.
ninth album and no questions from the audience. It was very like we're going to go through all the hits and all the costumes, and I loved it so much. So I would see that again, or Lady Gaga. She's my other favorite in concert.
So good. That's
Mhm.
one of the best, like, as far as entertainers go.
She's
That was
amazing.
amazing. Yeah,
She's
that was
amazing.
incredible. Okay, last one. What is your favorite aisle at Target? I just thought of that question today. I was like, this is the best
That's
question
a
in the
good
world. I
one.
know.
It is the aisle that has the pens and like the post-it flags,
Stationery.
the stationery, and then the paper planners underneath it.
Oh,
I've moved to online calendar, but I love
yeah.
a paper
I just
planner.
bought a whole bunch of like actual calendars, sticky notes, all that stuff. It's sitting on my desk at
all that
home.
stuff.
Yeah.
So now I just go to the store and look at it.
Yeah.
But that's my
Touch
favorite.
it, smell
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Perfect paper planner.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Renee.
Everybody check out her book. It is on such a cool topic, and I'm happy that we could make this happen.
Thank you.